So this next 5 minutes or so, I am going to talk about the book from the point of view really of the letters. That will become clearer once I start talking. So I'm going to. It's not a review. I am not qualified to review anything. It's not a critique. It's an appreciation, and as I say, from the point of view of the letters. I'm going to start with a bit of background context, which will get a bit confusing. I give you fair warning. My mother, Margaret Sinclair, credits her grandchildren, our children, John and Rhiannon, with discovering the letters. They were staying with my parents during a school holiday in 1988, and my mother sent them out to the garage to see what they could find for dressing up. Always a good distraction for wee kids, and why wouldn't you keep dressing up stuff in the garage? They saw an old tin trunk. They opened it, hoping it contained treasure. But inside, instead, they found it was full of the meticulously organised love letters that my grandfather, Jack Martin, had kept from the 10 years of his courting of Mamie Telfer, and more importantly, in this context, the letters that they had sent home from Malawi, Nyasaland, to their parents in Edinburgh. So now we've got 5 generations involved in this, implicated in this now, and that was the letters. This was a huge surprise to my mother because she knew nothing about them. Now, a dwindling number of people will know this, but my mother wrote copiously all her life. Poetry, short stories, at least one novel, articles for publication in magazines, that kind of thing. So it wasn't surprising that she more or less immediately reached for her glasses and her Amstrad word processor, does anyone remember those? And set about transcribing the spidery writing from 70-year-old super light paper into a legible digital form. And now this took a long time. And when she was done, she realized, first of all, that there was stuff in there that her family needed to know about. That was us. And secondly, that it might be of use to a wider audience seeking information about Malawi Nyasaland at that time. So now she had to have a go at writing non-fiction. And so the Salt and Light project was born. There were several consequences of this, several. My parents visited Malawi in 1991. They met the redoubtable pair of Reverends Maxwell Mazua Banda and Matia Nkoma, who persuaded them to set up the Mamie Martin Fund. Isobel spoke at an AGM of the Mamie Martin Fund about her Master of Theology dissertation using the letters as a resource. And hearing her talk about Jack and Mamie's story and hearing that told by someone not my mother, I was inspired to write a song about them. But don't worry, I'm not going to sing it here. Salt and Light was eventually published, as Isobel has already said, first in Malawi, then in Britain in 2003. And now, in Myth and Reality of the Missionary Family, Isobel has placed the letters in a wider historical context. I know my mother would be delighted that what Isobel has done with Jack and Mamie's letters is to pass the massive amount of information in those letters through an objective and academically rigorous filter. And as a result, we get to read a fascinating account of a sparsely documented part of the recent history of Malawi, Scotland, and, dare I say it, the British Empire. The First World War, the Kaiser's War, as my grandpa called it, played a big part in the lives of Jack and Mamie, not least because it kept them apart, delayed their marriage, and I suppose influenced their ultimate career choice. But the timeline of Isobel's book starts long before 1914, and I found that just as interesting as reading about members of my own family. And I'm sure Mum's deep interest in all things historical would have been piqued, to use a fancy word. One of the many things that motivated her to preserve the letters was all that information contained in them that might be useful in the broadest sense to somebody sometime out with the family. And I think it was partly for posterity that she laboriously transcribed all the letters onto her Amstrad. So thank you very, very much, Isobel, for getting that ball rolling and setting the letters off on their own journey. And finally, I'm sure that Margaret Sinclair, my mother, would be hugely, hugely relieved to know that the responsibility for continuing to shed light on those letters doesn't depend entirely on her family. Not that I'm suggesting we're not reliable. Thank you.